Okay, so before the break, we were making this web page. Just a basic thing. I would erase the board. It seemed like a better idea to do that during the break. If I share my screen. So the storyboard I put on the board, the wireframe's long gone, but it looks roughly like that thing that was drawn on the board earlier of the big header section up top, the 3 paragraphs, which in the wireframe were indicated by black lines. Yeah, probably could have left that picture up there. And then a picture down below, which again in the wireframe doesn't have any details, so it's just a box with like kind of an X on it, indicate that it was a picture, not text that went there. Then the storyboard, those same information just kind of labeled out. So we got that together. It's like, okay, this works. We're ready to go put it on our hosting site. So we release this web page to the world. Before we do that though, I want to make a little error in here real quick, because it's a very common error and something that's you're liable to see very, very soon and repeatedly throughout this semester and into the future as you put websites together. It's an error that happens a lot. And that is that Windows is not case sensitive. So when I created that file, or I didn't create that file, when I downloaded that file, I gave it a name that started with a lowercase l. But Windows could care less if I come in here and change this to a capital L. It's not a case sensitive machine. Macs or Unix machines, they would be case sensitive, but that option is built in, and most people go ahead and hit the checkbox on their Mac so that it's not case sensitive, just because it's just easier for a human to deal with if the computer doesn't care whether things are uppercase or lowercase. That box up there. So I changed it. The name of this picture is technically misspelled now, but you'll see when I reload it. Oh, and might as well show this. Oh, I'm probably familiar with browser cache, right? Not cache as in money, but C-A-C-H-E, like storage type cache. Probably heard that term before. And since web pages by design get transmitted across the internet, local machines remember little bits about the pages they've been to before. It cuts down transmission times. And if it doesn't indicate any changes, or if it doesn't notice any changes since the last time, so the first thing the server sends is the last update, so that the local machine can tell if that page has been changed since the last time it looked at it or not. And then just load it locally. Saves a whole lot of transmission data. It's a whole lot faster. Less processing as the stuff that gets transmitted through TCP/IP gets broken into pieces. The technical term for that's going to be packets. And then those packets travel separately across the internet and need reassembled on the other side. So it's a whole lot easier that if the page hasn't changed since the last time this browser looked at it, just load the one that it remembers seeing. Sometimes that can be a problem with development though, because the browsers will load from cache and you'll be trying to fix a problem and the browser's loading the old version because it doesn't notice anything's changed. So we might need to do a hard reload. You can go into history and empty certain amounts of the history. If you open the inspector panel, so just right click and hit inspect or hit F12 in most browsers, then if you, with the inspector panel open, if you long click on the reload button, you'll get options. As a normal reload would do that. A hard reload will try to ignore the cache, should ignore the cache, but sometimes it won't. It won't always ignore the cache. Or empty the cache and do a harder reload. Make sure the cache is not reading the one that the browser remembers seeing. That will be important as we move forward, because it's very, very infuriating when you're trying to fix a problem. You keep making changes and the browser won't show you your changes to see if the problem's fixed or not. So just open the inspector and do a long click on the reset button. And then instead of emptying the history for your browser and forgetting things that might be useful, it only does it for the particular page, and it only relates to the cache that it's currently looking at. More of a short-term version for that. Very useful when debugging. But you can see that the browser here could care less if that is the name of that picture is spelled with an uppercase or lowercase letter. It's like, okay, looking at the page, looks like it works. Time to go stick that on the hosting site. Did anybody have any trouble getting the hosting site set up? I think all the names that I see on the thumbnails today, I've already seen your submission on setting up the hosting site. So I assume there wasn't much trouble with it. If you have problems, let me know. I'll go ahead and log on here. And hopefully the page will upload this time. I don't know what was going on at the end of the day the other day. So here's our in-class examples. I'll jump over here. File manager. Very handy the other one. When they click on this one. Okay, I don't know why their PP is turned off on that one, but I have two accounts here. You know, upload lots of pages, lots and lots of pages to either particular account. So there's a couple extra ones more than you'll need for class. Oh, this one has the button in orange. I'll get that turned on before the next one. So I'll go over to File Manager. Again, finish the current project. So jump over here. Any web pages go in htdocs. So there's this index.html. Maybe I'll make a new folder to put things in. And call this class. Class example. So there's a new folder here. I'll navigate in that and then upload these two files. You need the image and the web page. Well, it seems to be doing the same thing. I'll give it a second, see if it uploads. And while I was doing that, I'll see if I can fix that other account. Please log into the control panel and enable FTP and file management. Oh, I never clicked, I approve. I never agreed to the terms on this account. That's probably why that button wasn't there. But if I go back over to it now, it'll be there. Okay, yeah. So that's apparently why that wasn't working. But maybe while fixing that, this finally uploaded. Let me do this instead. I'm not sure why that's not uploading very quick, but That's the only thing in that folder, so I could probably upload the whole folder. Oh, I am not sure why that's being difficult. Let's go back to Windows replay, try it. And hopefully it'll just take a moment. I'll give that a second while I look over the notes here. Is something not enabled here? Or is the other account different? Hmm. Okay, that's weird. Yeah, I'm not sure why it's doing it. Give it a second and look over my notes, and then we'll get back to that point. The point I was going to express though is that capital L, the thing I explicitly pointed out, if you didn't already guess, that will cause a problem on Linux machines. It's fine on Windows machines because it doesn't care about uppercase or lowercase letters, but Linux machines are case sensitive, so it would definitely cause a problem there. Their server must be backed up or something, so hopefully it's not going to take too long. So I get everything in my notes. Pages. We can go ahead and look at what it would take to turn this into 2 pages instead of, which is more like a site instead of just one. And leave that there in the background, and hopefully it'll upload. That free domain hosting place is connected to one of the better paid for ones. So obviously the people that pay for stuff get priority. So maybe the server's backed up or something. It's hard to say, but hopefully it'll start working before too long. If not, I will look into that problem and deal with that later. So we have a page, but usually when we think about websites, there's going to be more than one page. Or that core concept we talked about the other day, the hyperlink. Instead of transmitting a bunch of data, how about if I just tell you where to find that data? Then you can go get it yourself if you want it. The technical term for it's hyperlink. In common language, we just say link, but let's go ahead and create a second page to do that with. So I'll go ahead and add them and just make a second page, and then we'll connect them. So new file, and just a quick pass of the steps. Just reiteration is important in learning, right? You can see them more than once. So I'll call this class page 2.html, and the HTML it would run fine in the browser. That's just so that the text editor changes colors and picks words correctly. The icon, if we double click on the icon, the computer knows what to open it with. This one is not needed, but in the future it will be. And you have to come back and put it in everywhere. It's a whole lot easier to type the doc type in to begin with. And then we have opening and closing tags for everything. And every page we write will have a head section, the opening and closing tag, and a body section with an opening and closing body tag. And the stuff on the body is what shows on the page. Here's the other page. Whoops. And a paragraph tag. So I'll go ahead and set up the tags and come back, put the cursor back between them. Here's a second page. And I'm going to put another set of words here that we'll adjust here in just a moment. Back to page 1. So just a couple sets of words to see we clearly left that first page, and then some navigation things. So I'll add that on here somewhere. Maybe after all of this stuff before the picture. Paragraph, go to page 2. Save that. And most of your text editors, along with the save and save as you're probably used to, will also have a save all button. Because throughout the semester, we're going to be working in a lot of different files at once. And when you go back and check your changes, you want to make sure everything's saved. So that save all button will be very, very useful. Now if I reload that, and see there's the words, go to page 2, but y'all know what links are. We probably need that to be a link or a hyperlink instead of just words on the page. That way we can click on it. Is that go to page 2 doesn't really seem to have much to do with the name or anything that would be useful for us. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to look into why that's not uploading to the site. Maybe there's a setting off somewhere or something. But I'll get it figured out shortly before any homework is due or anything. Or if it seems to be a problem for a lot of people, but obviously the homework due dates can be pushed back if there's technical issues beyond our control. So moving on, talking about links. We need a way to get to that second page. So to create a hyperlink, we use an anchor tag. We're going to anchor this set of words to that other page. And again, it's one of the original ones, so it's abbreviated. Anchor is abbreviated A. We'll need an opening and closing one. And then everything in between them will go to turn into a hyperlink that goes to the other page. Eventually, right now it'll change colors. So if I hit Control S to save that and reload this, oh, not even changing colors yet. So just putting the anchor tag there isn't quite enough. Oh, and then as you can see, the anchor tag is nested inside of the paragraph tag because the paragraph is what has the actual formatting issues. What we have to do to turn it into a link is provide a hyperlink reference, which is abbreviated, hyperlink reference, and then we just have to say what we're referencing. And I mentioned earlier about the source attribute. The source is when we need the whole file every time in the same order. And hyperlink reference is any part of the other file. It could be the whole thing. So if we're linking to the other page, we're just going to go to it. So we're going to grab the whole thing. But we could just use parts of it with the reference. But a partial thing versus a whole thing. So our links, we want to use hyperlink reference, and then somebody can decide if they want to go there or not. Whereas the whole idea of the hyperlink, whereas a source, we're not giving them the option of whether or not they see the picture. The picture is going to be there. And then for the hyperlink reference attribute, which for most of the semester, I will probably just say href, because that's a big long word and we only type a couple letters. But at least starting out, we'll make sure you hear it enough that you remember what hyperlink reference refers to. We just need the name of the other page. So I call that class _ page 2.html. It's right here on the tab. I was reading it off that and I can't tell. From where I'm looking at the little video on the monitor here in the classroom, I can't see the light gray there. I didn't necessarily remember that's what I called it. Now it should look familiar. Turn blue, underline it. The things we recognize as a link. So when we click that, we follow that reference to the other page. And we can do the same thing on page 2. And I get between pages, we need anchor tags. So we'll stick an anchor tag before those words, and a closing anchor tag afterwards, and then add in a hyperlink reference attribute, which I didn't even have to type an H to get that on the particular text. I can see that the computer is just expecting, it's an anchor tag, so there should be a hyperlink reference there somewhere to something, to whatever these words are being anchored to. What was the first one called? Class example. HTML. Here you see the normal link, and it's purple because we've already been to that other page that has to do with that caching and stuff that we talked about earlier. Back to the first page, so a little bit more like a site. We can actually see this, navigate between the pages. Which, yeah, I have no idea why that the hosting site's not letting me not uploading that page. I'll have to look into that. Might have some permissions wrong or something. But there's other things we can talk about now and fix that when we're not under type constraints. So let me take my notes to see if there was anything I forgot to talk about, because I wrote everything on the notes and didn't really look at them while going through that. So there's no word marking that. Okay, that's good for that. Sit. So the next thing, segue to this, I'm going to point at this. So we saw a couple types of tags. And I'm going to start at these inner ones and go outward. I'm starting at the innermost tags and work outward. That's called bubbling. That'll be an important terminology. Alternatively, we could start at the outer tags and work inward. And that's called cascading, like a waterfall cascading down the cliffside, which you've probably already heard that word mentioned a couple times for one of the things you're studying. So that will be a very important one. But when we start in the middle and work outward, that's called bubbling. And it's something important the computer needs to do. And you see this tag here, we put some text in it. And then outside of that, the next tag out is like a container to hold that container. that thing that has the text. Or that paragraph tag initially, here it has the text directly. That's the last step. That's what's holding our data. But down on the next line, the paragraph tag is holding an anchor tag, and the anchor tag is holding text. So there's a couple levels of how we put things into tags. Oh, good. I'm going to start with that. We'll go back to the board for a few minutes. I can find the marker. So what can we put in tags? And we didn't really see the first one on the list here, but we will before long. We can put information for the computer to see. Essentially metadata. That word is pretty much worked into common language. Computers are such a prevalent part of our society. Information for computer to use. I wrote the word information there. Has everybody heard the difference between information and data? You know that distinction? Does anybody know? Have you heard it before? Want to say something, or is the silence me? Not sure. Kind of a subtle one, but it will show up a lot. We're always talking about data. That's what these machines do. They manipulate data. But when I talk about the programs here at school, do I refer to it as data technology? Or I call it IT, right? Information technology. And there is a difference, subtle difference, and that comes with the usage. Information is useful data. Whenever the data becomes useful and serves a purpose, then we refer to it as information. Just a subtle thing that you're going to see repeatedly in classes. So that's one thing we can put in tags. I haven't really seen that in our. I actually saw it some. We put in that language attribute that told the browser the page was showing in English. So that if we wanted to translate to a Spanish page, it would look for that, or well, anymore the browsers translate themselves. So that tag's not as important as what it once was. And I'm going to put a word here for clarifying. I'm going to call the tags containers. That's what we were just looking at there, right? Tags can hold other tags. Tags can hold the text themselves. Our technical terms elements, but really they're just like little containers we can put stuff in. We can put some information for the computer to use. We can put in there other containers. Which remember our technical term for the opening, closing tag, and all the data in between it is an element. So we can put elements inside of other elements. Free. And these are the two we just looked at. We can put words or arbitrary symbols. They don't have to be words per se, but I'll leave that, write it on the list that way, or graphics. That's basically what we can put into these tags. Raw data itself, or places to hold raw data, and just keep nesting layers and layers and layers down, or information for the computer itself. I'll label that here. So this, and that's going to show up across the board. It's IT, information technology, not data technology. So we're concerned about when that data becomes useful. So useful data and words and graphics, as far as the machine is concerned, those are arbitrary data. The thing that's unique for that particular page. So the idea of containers is what I kind of want to lead into. So we'll have a web page. And we need a way to divide this page up into the sections that we want. That way we can keep the sections together, move them around, adjust them, control them as an entire section instead of individual components. We will have some stuff there. Some stuff there. Another section down at the bottom. I'll do it like a wireframe. So all this will be folded in. All this will be filled in. Our main content through here. Sort of a wireframe. Maybe instead of filling that in, I'll just mark out the sections. And down here, maybe center the actual data itself. And we have it organized into different sections or divisions on the page. So divisions of our web page. We need a container that's pretty much dedicated to that. Never quite gets down to this part. It is solely for holding other containers. And for a long time, well, there's been one since the beginning, but for a long time, from when HTML was created, all the way up until HTML5 became the standard, there was only one tag that filled that purpose for holding other containers and solely doing that. And that's the div tag. Slash div, that doesn't look like a D. So the div tag, short for division, just a division of the page, a segment so that we can keep all the arbitrary data, the words and pictures inside of it together as we move them around the page. One of the big things that HTML5 brought in cleared up a big problem with that, because y'all have seen web pages. They can get a little complicated at times, right? There's stuff all over the page, things organized, some parts organized in columns, some parts spread all the way across. Mix it, and we mix and match those divisions. Which means by the time we get all that stuff in there, there's going to be a whole lot of these tags that just say div. And especially when we get down to the bottom and have all those closing div tags, the opening div tags will have some attributes in them. the identifier attributes, which we will see because they're important to CSS. I will see those very soon, but the closing tags, it's kind of hard, might be hard to tell which one goes with which. And if you start editing things, you might forget to delete one of those or delete one too many, kind of like curly braces in some of our programming languages. They're a long way from many keywords that they go with. So it's easy to lose track of what they are, of what each particular one is. So with HTML5, to address that, they introduced semantic tags. And to summarize it, that's basically multiple versions of the div tag with useful names. Div with useful names. Make sure I write that useful part clearly. And I'm just going to write the opening tag for the notes. You've heard it repeatedly now. You all know a closing tag goes with our opening tags. Except for those special cases where we would never nest anything between them, like an image. So this would have things, so instead of calling everything div, so having a header div and a body div and a footer div, we would actually have tags called header. And the header does go on the body. That's one that confuses people a lot. Let's see, because we have that head section that has to be there. If you want to put the header in the head, but the header is part of the body. It's just a division of the body. So we have like header tag, and then at the end we close it with a slash header. And all kinds of them. Nav. That's not how to spell nav. Short for navigation. So like the navigation bar or the navigation menu down the side, depending on whether it's across the top or down the side. Instead of putting it in a div tag and have a navigation div, we just call that container element nav. It makes it a lot easier to keep track of it. Then we'll have things like content, main, section, article, aside. And they all have some pre-formatting issues, and it goes on and on and on. There's a whole lot of them. More than we're going to need to memorize off the top of our heads. Like often with computer stuff, there's lots of reference material out there. So what you need to know is the good reference material. Where do you go to look these things up when you need them? And they all behave just like the div tag that we had for the first 25 years of HTML. From 1990 until 2015, 2014, I guess, 89 to 2014, so 25 years. As the debate over those two things I just mentioned, bubbling and cascading, went on and on and on and on. And the debate went on so long that machines advanced to the point it was no longer an issue. So the debate was never really settled. It just was no longer an issue whether bubbling or cascading was better. Remember, bubbling is start at the innermost and work outward, and cascading is start at the outermost and work inward. The debate went on so long that machines got fast enough that we do both, and then one of them sets everything up and the other one verifies. So I just do both of them for a double check is what eventually was, and that's when HTML5 came along. They're ready for HTML5 and set an official standard on everything. So there's a lot of these semantic tags, useful names, and it's not a restriction. We could call this part of we could use the header tag for this part of the page and the nav for all this big content here, and call the part up here the footer. All that's going to do is confuse you because you're the one that looks at the code. So useful names, so use them usefully, but it is not a restriction. And it's a lot, so we're not going to memorize them. We just need to know where to look them up. So I'm going to start with the official place to look them up. So I said, I keep mentioning that word. It's standard. HTML5, all this stuff is standardized. And it's standardized by a group called the W3 Consortium. The World Wide Web Consortium. They're the ones who made those decisions. And check this out. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on there. There must be an error on my account. I will get that fixed and address it later. I'm not going to waste class time on it. But we'll actually see that example sometime soon. Our local machines are usually fine with however we type words, but when we put it on servers, most servers are Linux servers, so they are case sensitive. But we'll talk about see that repeatedly. So now the standards are set by the W3 Consortium, and it's usually abbreviated. Or World Wide Web Consortium is abbreviated W3. So the official place to look things up is W3 Schools. W3schools.com. Which while I'm talking about reference material, I did have a slide thing in the white notes for today instead of the yellow notes. As you think about projects for the upcoming thing, a really good class project is often reference material. If you don't have anything else in mind, make a website for HTML and CSS reference, because that really helps to reinforce the knowledge. It's part of the reason there's so many out there. But to start with, let's look at the official one, W3 Schools. Next, I want to wait till we see CSS, get a little bit of practice with CSS. So next week, maybe, some point next week, we'll look at the best one. But we'll start with the official one. So these people set the standards, so this is the official place to go learn about it. HTML, there's learning stuff, video things, CSS, JavaScript. Those are the three parts of the official standard: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. That's what the browser runs. Then we need some other stuff because it's the internet. There's a lot of servers involved. So on the servers, Python, SQL, PHP, jQuery, C++, Java, Bootstrap, a bunch of other things. So all these other languages are things that would be on the server end of it. There's XML, we saw that. Lots and lots of reference material. But the first three here are the HTML5 standard. And if you're in the software development degree program, you'll take an entire class on JavaScript. So you'll see that one by itself. We will see it at the end of the semester. We'll look at JavaScript and PHP just to see some scripting things. JavaScript, because that's the standard for the local scripting, and PHP is just a very common one to run on servers, and easy to pick up quickly because it's a loosely typed language. So here on this page, you'll just want to check the HTML reference. I'll scroll down. Well, here on the main page, you can see, oops, I didn't mean to do that. you'll see there's lots and lots and lots of tags and what they do. Base specifies the URL target for all things. So maybe we don't want to type the whole address into things like our website's going to reference ID text web page a lot. So we can set a base URL there on the home page on the index, then everything else on our website just adds that last little bit. So we don't have to type that, or we don't have to copy and paste the whole URL everywhere. We just have that the last file name in the stack. Because it already knows what domain to look at or subdomain. We can categorize them in steps. We will definitely see that one later. And it's also very, very useful for when things update. BR, a line break, a button tag. Canvas is for drawing. We use JavaScript to draw things, or WebGL, OpenGL, for if you want to draw 3-dimensional graphics on there. Just replace an HTML tag to draw things on with dynamic scripting. Captions go with images or tables or images. You see there's a long list. I'll just pick some random one here. Probably in a dialogue. Code, that's a good one. Code formats things differently. It goes along with two other tags, usually called pre and post. That might have been a complicated one to start with. But sometimes we want to put code on our page, right? Like this is a website of HTML references pulled up right now. So it's got HTML code all over it. But you'll notice the browser's not showing the HTML code. Or the browser's not running the HTML code, it's showing it. The code tag, along with pre and post, are how we set that up. You'll see there's long descriptions, what browsers it works on, other things about it. And all over the place, you'll see these little sections with this try it yourself button, which is exactly what the label of that seems to imply. So there's some code here. Notice how, if we look at our HTML over here, we have our header section in the first paragraph, and that's where that code tag shows up. If we look over here, notice that it's formatted differently than the text around it. It's made to stand out, to be separate. Same thing with the background color. It doesn't actually run. And this is an editor, we can change things. The code element is a random example. Buttons are for clicking. Background color. Green is a nice color. I'll just add some words in there. Oops. I'll leave the typo in. Because it's not a document editor. It doesn't have autocorrect. If something's spelled wrong, the computer's going to run it. We're not wasting any memory in our browser for autocorrect stuff. I don't know why I'm still seeing ads for gold. That's been going on for like 2 weeks now. Like, okay, I'm getting bored with seeing those ads. I want to see something different. But hopefully, I guess I just need to go do random searches on Walmart or something and get Google to update the ad stuff. You can see now all that stuff inside those tags changed fonts. But you can go in here and edit it and try things, test things out. So while you're looking things up, there's that editor right there. Address tag, let's see what this is about. Your first homework assignment, if anybody's looked at that, there's definitely an address section in there. I don't think our book mentions the address tag. So click on that. There's a bunch of stuff to read, or it's an active subject. We learn by doing. Click the try it yourself button and make changes to see what happens. So address element, just about that. They didn't seem to put any tags in there. If we maybe add some random words to see what a regular paragraph looks like here. And a closing tag on that. And we'll run it again. Looks like a slightly different font. There's break lines everywhere, so maybe check the line break. PR. Another line. Break. Yeah. Oops. I'm very much in the habit of hitting Control S when I say that. Okay, so if we just type text with that line break afterwards, I'm just in the habit of putting a line there. Oh, nice. Finally seeing some like ads for things other than gold coins. There's no space in between them like we get with the paragraph. But everything in between the address tag looks like it automatically italicized it. I'll put one up there just to see if that did it. And yeah, just try different things to see what it does. It looks like it's automatic italicized. So you might be wondering quickly, is there an italics tag? It's actually several. Obviously that goes back to the beginning. So it is just I. If you look through there, you'll see there's not nothing spelled italics, but that's, you could probably guess that's one of the original ones he made back when HTML was first created. So checking the abbreviations, see there's an I tag. Look at the it's an alternate voice or mood. Typically displayed in italics. And use I element only when there's not a more appropriate semantic element. So these other ones are kind of nice. So I obviously italicizes stuff, but this is America, right? We have the ADA laws, the Americans with Disabilities Act. Accommodations are required by law. And definitely in anything government. And once a business hits a certain size, it's required like it would be for a government institution. Or small businesses, if your business is such that you're expected to have disabled patrons, then you are certainly, it's legal requirements that you have to make accommodations for any disabilities. And one of those is vision impaired people. And well, that accommodation is easy, screen reader. However, screen readers need ways to convey this information. Okay, like reading through this sentence here, we just hit that word. If I go to the try it yourself section, I'll erase the lorem ipsum. I'll erase all this stuff. So in this sentence, highlight in I tag, these words are the important ones. So if we run that, for people who can see fine, that's very obvious what's going on there, right? The words, these words in that sentence are italicized, indicating that they're different. They're the important ones. But a screen reader can't really do anything with that, because how do you speak italic? Or likewise, this one's not as extreme because this could be used somewhere. The original tag, a B for bold. People without any sight impairments can look at that and tell very easily what the important words are. But how do you, I guess you can speak bold, but there's better ones to use. So instead of bold, those have a strong tag, which does the exact same thing as bold. And it's part of the semantic tag. It's a more useful name than just B as well. Because it's a whole lot easier for a screen reader to speak strongly. So when it's reading that, it'd be something like, in this sentence, these words are the important ones. And help convey that emphasis that would be missing. Same thing for italics. Oh, and what I just did there, if you weren't aware of it, double clicking on a word should select the whole word. And programmers put that together, so oftentimes our programming notation is taken into consideration on that double clicking on something to select it. IP addresses are a good example. If there's words around something that it only selects to the period, but if it's an IP address, the whole IP address will select, even with all the things inside of it. But that's useful when programming. Another one of those useful little shortcuts. But here, back to what originally was. When we look at it in this sentence, these words are the important ones. They get read normally. But when I was trying to read that, I still threw something on there. So something that does the exact same thing is I is EM, to stand for emphasis, not the measurement. We will talk about the EM measurement at length, probably starting Wednesday. That's one of our basic measurements. Because a screen reader, when I hit the run button, you can see the words look exactly the same things italicized, but it is possible to speak with emphasis. In this sentence, these words are the important ones. So screen readers can do things like that when you use with the semantic tags. So they're very important for disability accommodations. It makes a big difference. As far as the visual appearance of it, it still looks exactly the same, but they're just generally better to use. So it's a good habit to get into right from the beginning to look at those things. We can see here in our reference material, emphasis, strong, mark words, cite something, specify what's the definition, and there's a long list of these terms. So you're going to want to spend a little bit of time on the official page here, because we have our textbook. That's got a lot of stuff in there. Really good start. But HTML 5.2 now is programming language. And the 0.2 at the end there expresses the point really nicely. Like all software, programming languages are dynamic. They change. And textbooks, even ebooks, it takes a minute to get everything moving along nicely with that. To get everything updated in a textbook takes a lot longer than just on this official reference webpage. So there's gonna be a lot of things here that aren't in the book. And yeah, with that textbook, takes a while longer. The current version 10, the one we're using, that came out last fall, has some stuff that's been part of the standard since 2017, I think. So it takes textbooks a little while to catch up. And there's some other things when we get near the end, there, especially some things with CSS that have improved a lot that the textbook doesn't really kind of get into. We'll see those at the end of the semester. There's a lot of things. Our textbook is not all encompassing. So you're going to spend some time looking at this page, w3schools.com, the HTML reference page. Can I get back to, oh no, those are links. I click here, we'll go back to it. Eventually. Nope, that's the tutorial. Or if you go to w3schools.com, check the HTML reference page and just spend a while looking through those and trying out some of those tags. Because Wednesday, we're going to get into the cascading style sheets, and we'll be starting to define how things are laid out on the page and white space around them, how much padding or margins, things like that they have. But all of these things, the semantic tags in HTML5, those names should be useful. So there's a default setting too. So before we get into styling defining all our own style rules, spend a little while looking at these and what the default style is. Give you a better idea of when you go to change something, you may not need to start from scratch to find a whole set of rules, because there might be something else already out there that's almost exactly what you want. So that would be my recommendation for lab time. This is an active subject. We learn by doing. So in all of our classes, we'll make sure there's plenty of time to do stuff. So about an hour, so the rough plan is about an hour and 10 minutes, hour and 15 minutes, something like that. We'll take a break. Another hour, 10 minutes after that, hour 10, hour 15 again. Then we can split off for lab time. It's about where we're at now. And class is scheduled to go to 4:50. So I'm gonna go ahead and end the Zoom call so that I can get a recording, because I don't get the recording until the Zoom call ends. But from now until 4:50 is still our class time. So I'm not going to be doing anything except sitting by a computer, waiting for you all to ask questions if you have them. But it's time to practice this stuff, because it's an active subject. We need lots of practice. And my recommendation for lab time today is going to go to the w3schools.com. It's the official reference material, and just look at some of the different tags. So before we start styling things ourselves on Wednesday, take a look at what a lot of the default styling is, and then might at least give you a better idea on some things that would give you a better starting point for different situations. But otherwise, does anybody have any questions? I assume that means no questions. We will see these things repeatedly throughout the semester. We've seen the basic idea of HTML tags, and most of the material here is going to be about this. We're going to focus a lot more on the CSS, the styling and layout. But there's still a lot more about tags to talk about, so this stuff we'll see repeatedly. If you have any questions, I learn messages and text messages make noise on my phone, and I can jump back on the Zoom call. From now until 4:50, I will be sitting by a computer ready to jump back on a Zoom call if anybody sends me a question. Otherwise, I will see you all on Wednesday, and we'll get started into take our first look at cascading style sheets, CSS. Y'all have a good one.